Showtime members, for the benefit of our participants, please use the rename feature next to your name on the participant list to add Showtime to your screen name so they can easily recognize Showtime members. At this time, will all participants except our featured speaker please mute their audio and remain muted unless speaking. Welcome to Showtime Presents. Tonight's presentation will be led by Connie Weiss. Connie is an experienced Toastmaster and a longtime member of Showtime Toastmasters, and her topic tonight will be virtual etiquette. So without any further delay, please welcome Connie Weiss.
Thank you, Trish, for such a great introduction. So most of us has probably been almost a year since we've been attending our Toastmaster meeting online. And some may say, do we really need a review or a primer on etiquette? Absolutely. By a raising your hands, how many of you have attended a meeting where there was a faux pas or a disruption of any sort? Or people were talking over each other during the business meeting? I don't know if I've ever had a meeting, and we all do it, where somebody leaves themselves on mute, or they unmute and then they're like, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Because they're not giving themselves or other people a chance for the delay, right? So absolutely, this is a very current topic. So when you're the Toastmaster, your main role is to what? Provide a productive, efficient, and fun meeting. So as a host, planning and pre-planning and practicing goes a long way. By a show of hands, how many of you feel comfortable in the online environment and being a Toastmaster? Okay, most of us, right? But do you have a backup plan if there's technology issues? What do? What if you have a guest that all of a sudden doesn't know the Toastmasters protocol and they start cussing? Or there's a lot of other disruptions. I actually was at a meeting visiting as a guest, and unfortunately, one of the members' teenage daughters was very upset, and we heard, "I hate you," and the door slamming before the TM member could mute the line. Things happen, so be prepared. So what can you do as the Toastmasters to help minimize disruptions and distractions? I will at this time ask Trish to tell us, as our Zoom master, and myself being the Toastmasters could ask to be the co-host. Trish, what can we do to help minimize distractions, audio distractions?
A good rule of thumb is to make sure that if your cats have a paper bag for a toy, that you remove it from earshot of your meeting. I apologize for the earlier distraction. The important thing, though, is to be prepared. Look around you and think about what could be distracting. I've developed a new habit now where I turn off my phone or I mute my phone before I start a Zoom meeting, just like I would have in an in-person meeting, just because you don't want things like that going off. I like to get to the meeting early so that if I have any audio or video issues, I can get them solved before the meeting actually starts. So it's things like that. Just think about, around you. I've been told that I have 2 kitty cat clocks, and some people can hear them ticking in the background. I haven't had the complaint for a while, so I'm thinking I have soundproofed it enough, but I do not want to have to take my kitty cat clocks down. I like them too much.
And what can we do to mute our participants as the Zoom master or co-host?
Well, as a Zoom master or co-host, you have the ability to mute any individual participant or all participants. And all participants will include the speaker or yourself as well. So be careful about just saying, I'll just mute everybody, because you'll mute yourself. There are 2, if you have the participant window open at the bottom, there's a mute all or that you could use as a host or co-host. And if you aren't looking there, you can either hover over a person in the gallery, or you can see the audio and visual feeds in the participant list to the right, and you can simply click on a audio feed or on a video feed if you needed to suppress someone.
Great tips. Thank you very much. What about reminding your members under housekeeping, again, to turn off their phones, but to be polite and courteous and to minimize distractions? The kitty clock, great example. Backgrounds are huge. Am I the only one at work that's really interesting when we first started the Zoom meetings to check out my coworkers' home environments? I was kind of curious. This next faux pas was conducted at work because my coworker got so comfortable, he forgot himself. And what I mean by that, he's a smoker. And we're having a Zoom team meeting. And guess what he was doing during the team meeting? Ooh. Or you've heard of horror stories where, or maybe you all are aware of the flush that was heard around the world. Do you hear about that one? The Supreme Court Justice? Yes, somebody went to the bathroom and forgot to mute. Now, I know, and there's been jokes about being dressed properly from the waist up. Who cares if you're in your pajamas bottom down? Well, recently, one of my girlfriends committed a faux pas because she's like, no, this is a proper Toastmaster meeting and I have to dress proper, and I haven't worn a dress in so long. I'm like, okay, sounds so good so far, right? Well, she got a brand new work rise desk and she didn't adjust the camera angles until the beginning of the meeting. Let's just say we weren't talking to her face. And then we had to remind her that she needed to lift up her camera to eye level. Then she has a habit. She was on her couch and the raised laptop. And her dress was a little mini. And in the meeting, she got tired of standing, so she raised it down, and it actually caught some of the dress. It wasn't a pretty picture, okay? So be mindful of what you're showing and who's watching, because everybody's watching. If you can see my screen, I've got a very interesting statistical pie chart. I'm checking out the coworker's house. What's on their walls? Did we take a shower? That to me, engagement. Did my neck always look like that? The angles, very important. The lighting is important, whether you're a host or attendee. Moving that camera. Sometimes I get like motion sick when somebody walks around, right? And moving. And so have a stationary camera. If for whatever reason you have to leave, put it in the chat if you have time, or just go 1 minute and then put your screenshot and have a nice professional picture to fill in. But just don't leave, especially in the middle of somebody talking, because how does that make them feel? Now let's talk about engagement. How do we know if somebody is paying attention? I think it's more difficult in the online environment because we don't have the normal verbal cues that we typically have in person, right? So occasionally head nod if you agree, or give somebody the thumbs up, or show that you're engaged. Because we all know not to do and what people are doing when they're looking down for 8 to 10 minutes, or you hear the keyboard, you know that they're texting, or they may have just got a notification. Be considerate. Turn all those off, right? Give people your time. Be present. Because it's very hard. Everybody's saying, look into a camera as a speaker. And I'm sure everybody that is in Showtime will tell you that is one of my biggest challenges right now, is to look in the speaker. Because I want to look at you. I want to look at the squares on my screen to see if you are getting what I'm saying, or if I'm saying something funny, that you're laughing. I've tried so many things. A little post-it note in front of the camera. Now I put a little pig in front of the camera to remind me. But sometimes even the pig doesn't help. Because I miss that engagement. Shelley, do you feel as engaged in a Zoom meeting as you do in person? Do you feel as engaged on a Zoom meeting as you do in person? You're muted.
Unmute. Yes, I'm in Zoom meetings at least twice a week,
Mhm.
but I know all the people and we're all docents. And so we all know each other and we try to behave ourselves because we know the housekeeping rules we have to give to our visitors to the museum. But even then, you know, we kind of fail.
Have you, or are you comfortable admitting to a faux pas that you've had over Zoom?
Oh, woof. Yeah, but I don't think I've ever had any really big ones. What I've had the problems with, I like to talk. And one of my very good friends, he and I get into great discussions, and sometimes we interrupt each other when we shouldn't.
So are you guilty of maybe having sidebar discussions as well?
Well, our conversations all go too fast. They're too fast. We can't keep up with the sidebars.
Okay.
But one of the meetings that I have, not the one that there's 4 of us that we meet every week, there's another group with about 10 of us, and we do use the sidebars.
Okay. Well,
because we all try to be polite and not talk over each other.
Good. One of the ways to minimize talking over each other is calling people by their name. So you know who you ask the question, like I did, and then ask the person to speak.
Yes.
The next person I will ask for this question is Wendy.
Yes.
Tell us about one of your recent faux pas.
I think it's talking when I thought I was on mute. Somebody will come into my office or walk down the hall and they'll yell, someone in my family, and then I hear it in the background and I'll answer them while I'm supposed to be on the call. That's even happened at a work meeting.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yep. I really like the idea that you just shared about setting the ground rules at the front of the meeting for any guests. I really like that.
Yeah, and it's something as a reminder, because even though we all should know, I was at TLI this weekend, and during one of the sessions, somebody's cell phone went off.
Mhm.
And you can say, well, we're all Toastmasters and we should know, but we had a 10-minute break. So that person probably checked their messages and then just hurried up and, to get into back to the session, the next session, and just simply forgot. We're all human. It's no big thing. You never know when somebody's going to knock at your door or the doorbell's going to ring or there's a siren. So just gentle reminders. We've returned from our break. Please make sure that your cell phone is off if you've turned it on. Or any good hostess would say, also, just remember, once you finish talking, please mute your mic again. Just simple reminders throughout the meeting to help minimize that distraction. My recent faux pas was that I wore my hair up all day, and I've got a lot of hair and it's thick. And without thinking about it, I let it down and I was going like this. And one of my friends who I hadn't seen in a long time said, "Oh my gosh, Connie, your hair's grown really long, or is that a wig?" And I'm like, oh, wow. That disrupted the meeting. Another example at TI that just happened was the session was in full swing, and this person said, "Oh, hi, Connie, it's been a long time." Very awkward. "What do you do?" I'm like, and then the facilitator went on and was like, "Oh, please don't say, oh, let's all say hi to Connie." It was just like a little bit awkward. Warren, since we're such a close group of people here, share your recent faux pas.
Okay, most of the Zoom, strictly speaking, Zoom meetings that I attend are Toastmasters meetings. And then also, say, in our organization, rather large attending meetings with, say 50 or more people. And they do all kinds of things, so there aren't any disruptions. What I do a lot of are conference calls on Skype with no video. And we have a daily status meeting Monday through Thursday at 9 a.m. And just as the meeting was wrapping up, I can tell you the date, December 22nd at 9:40 a.m. We were just wrapping up and somebody said that he said, "I've got to go, Mike's calling. There's a problem with the database build." And I was kind of watching things too. And I looked over and saw that it was where we do our updated database into production. And I could see that we had a very serious problem with our data links to other utilities. And in my mind, I forgot that I had not hung up. And I said, "Oh, shoot," except I didn't say shoot. I said the SH-T word. And I didn't know it till somebody shortly thereafter sent me a note saying, "I want to know what you saw because you don't normally talk like that." And I explained the whole thing to him. And later that afternoon, I had an email exchange with somebody else. And I said, "Did you hear me use an expletive this morning?" And he said, "We all did." So I got out of the mode. I forgot that I was still on the conference call when I was starting to debug the problem. And as I said, it was a very serious issue that we saw. We got it resolved, but it was operationally, it was not a good situation to be in.
Not the impression you want to leave. And it's interesting that your coworkers know you well enough to say, hey, this is not like you, right? So,
Well, I've been in the same department for 38 years.
oh, 8 years. Wow, congratulations.
Most of the people, though, have been there much less time than that.
Ingrid, do you want to share a faux pas?
I don't know if I could call it a faux pas, but it is an ongoing challenge, potential challenge. I think I've kind of mastered it. And that is that I have to do all my Zoom meetings and everything on a phone. So I'm on an iPhone and it's working out fine, except when someone texts me or something and I have to reach up like this and swipe up. And so it's constantly managing the cell phone with that, but it really hasn't been that big of an issue. It's just when people are sharing screens and things, I'm constantly swiping back and forth to see what the screen is. And as far as observing who's on the call, that's not a problem for me, because I can only see 3 people at a time and 4 people at a time, and I'm one of them. So it's like 3 people at a time. So if I wanted to see who's here, as I'm doing right now, I need to swipe to the next screen. But so I don't know that it's really a faux pas. It's just something a workaround that I'm doing. And it's actually been very successful with all the meetings and things that I've had to run. So that's my sharing.
Well, thank you.
So it sounds like Ingrid doesn't have a problem staying engaged with a Zoom session because she's busy moving the screens on her phone.
Yeah. So
I do miss the in-person things in one sense, just because of the connection and what you've already mentioned, Connie. However, I have been able to cover so much ground. I've been all across Arizona, just right here in my kitchen. So that has made it a little bit more convenient, especially being area director this year. It's really given me more opportunities than I would have had if we, were still in person.
yes, there's definitely a lot of pros and cons to having the Zoom. It gave me a completely new skill set. I had to learn to stay in my frame because I'm a gesture girl and I talk with my hands, and you have to use gestures should be a little bit more slowly when you are on Zoom, because otherwise what happens? You come in and out and you lose fingertips, or you're talking down here with your hands and nobody's seeing them, or they just see your thumbs. That's another thing to think about, is your placement. My club is great in always trying to help me raise my Zoom game. And last meeting, I believe it might have been Jared, who's also on with us tonight, is I have a habit of sitting sideways. And I was really thinking about that. And I thought, well, I'm thinking I'm straight on, but I do, because right now I'm a walker and I'm kind of nursing a sore hip. And until he brought that to my attention, I didn't realize that I was presenting more like this rather than being direct. One of the greatest tips that I got when we first started Zoom was for my mentor, and that is Trish, was to get a free Zoom account and start practicing, looking at what you're presenting. The eye contact, still hard for me, as I mentioned, but I'm trying. Am I sitting too close? I have a headset that has the mute button on it. And this is one of my regular faux pas, is I will move, and guess what? No, because I've hit the mute button accidentally because I've moved. Standing up, I also have a riser, and it took me a while to place my camera at eye level. Nobody wants to see that shot where people are looking up your nose, right? Not a big fan. So these are things that we can minimize when we're hosting and being at the Toastmasters or as an attendee. Things to think about. If you're competing, definitely you need to think about making sure that you stay in frame and that your gestures are correct and matching what you're saying, but you're not doing it too fast where you're just showing your thumbs or twiddling your fingers. Jared, would you like to share one of your Zoom meeting faux pas?
Well, not necessarily a Zoom meeting, but we have a team. We use Microsoft Teams at work. Because of security, we don't always use Zoom in my work setting. But I was trying to open up a program, and it was not working, and they were going off of that document, and so I was getting frustrated. I didn't curse, but I was getting frustrated there, and then I didn't realize while I was getting frustrated, I still had my microphone on, so I had to make that adjustment pretty quickly.
So again, we've all had our little shares of things that, gosh, if we could have done a little bit different, or maybe even bad habits. I'd like to talk about eating. Do you think it's okay to eat during a work meeting or even a Toastmasters meeting? We will have a poll in just a minute. I currently belong to 3 clubs. The first one is Showtime, and it meets at 6:30, and members eat, and we're comfortable. The second is Epicurean, which we're a dining club. So we've actually had encouraged members to prepare a recipe and talk about how our different takes on the recipe and how things came out. And we eat. It's automatically assumed we'll be eating during the meeting. But in my last club, which is Dos Lenguas, they would be mortified if I started eating. Trish, can you have our poll, please? Okay, and can you tell me when the results?
Okay, the results are ready. Do you want me to share?
Yes, please. Okay, interesting. 33% of us don't care. Okay. Well, I'm pros and cons both ways. Like I said, if you're respectful, but I've also been to a meeting where it was disruptive when this person was eating. And they had fast food, and we heard, like Trish was saying, with a paper bag. Well, they were opening it up. Now, that's inconsiderate if you're speaking, right? What are you supposed to, when you hear that? It could be enough to throw you off as a speaker. Another thing that I forgot to mention, but I alluded to, if you have to leave. I was visiting a club, and the girl was giving her icebreaker. And there was 2 guests, and left at different points during her speech. They just disappeared. And she said, was I that bad? And we're like, all rushed to her and said, oh no. They were just guests and we don't know why they left, but you weren't that bad. Don't even think about it. Okay, engagement, tougher to keep people engaged in the Zoom meeting. I learned that a great way to keep people engaged is having a poll, right? It breaks up the monotony of just hearing, in this case, just one person talking. So that's another great tip to have if you want to add a little bit more engagement. The other, which we've been doing, is asking questions, such as, Warren, do you find it harder to engage online? Are you experiencing Zoom fatigue? There's even a name of going to too many Zoom meetings.
It's sometimes is more difficult to stay engaged for the duration of the meeting. I think overall there may be more. I don't know if this is because we've gone remote or if it's just because of other things there's more projects that are being done and so forth. But I spend more time in meetings now than I did before. There's actually, well, I could digress into an article in The Economist where apparently a lot of managers felt they had to keep an eye on their people, and so they were calling more meetings. But now they're beginning to realize they don't have to do that the people are working remotely and that. So I don't think there was quite that situation in my case, but I would say, to get back to your question, yes, I hope the meetings will last a little less. And I speak here of work meetings, not the Toastmasters meetings. If they're of a shorter duration, I can stay engaged more effectively when it's an online meeting as opposed to an in-person meeting with a shorter duration.
Thank you. Yes, Trish.
I just wanted to add to that. I am suffering from Zoom fatigue. By the time I do 6, 7 WebEx sessions during work, then grab some dinner and jump back on a Zoom meeting for a Toastmasters meeting, I am starting to feel a little virtual fatigue. But so much can be done, as you mentioned, to make sure that people do stay engaged. I'm a little less bothered if someone has to, turn off their video for a little bit and then they come back again. I don't find that as distracting anymore because I realize that something's probably going on that they don't want to share. Okay. I just had one of the cats come back in, and so I stopped my video. You don't need to see my cat, crawling all over the keyboard, and went on mute so I could holler at my husband and tell him to get the cats distracted somewhere else in the house. You'd say, well, just close the door, but they get worse if I close the door. So I just need to get them entertained somewhere else in the house. In today's environment with the pandemic, working during the day, I have deliveries that show up. I'll mute myself, turn off my video. I'll ping somebody to let them know I'm stepping away for just a moment. Has nothing to do with not wanting to be engaged in the meeting. Has everything to do with the fact that I have to accept a delivery, and then I'll be right back again. So there's so many things that can happen during the course of a meeting, but we need to handle it professionally. Don't leave your mic on so that somebody hears you hollering at the delivery guy or whatever, or dragging the boxes into the house. Make sure that you've turned off your video, turn off your sound, your audio, and then take care of what you need to do and hurry back as quick as you can. So again, that's up to the person leading the meeting to set those etiquette expectations up front. Okay, if you're in an environment where things can happen, then give people permission to take care of things that they need to take care of and hurry back.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing. To Warren's point, I was reading some interesting statistics, one from the Peer Center, and 70% of all Americans are working remotely, and most of us have 2 or 3 meetings at least. Some, like Trish, have a lot more. So by a show of hands, how about the other people? Of anybody else experiencing Zoom fatigue? Yeah, okay. Shelley, you no, okay. Can you share?
Let me see if I can unmute.
Oh, you muted you muted yourself.
Oh, good. I'm glad I wasn't talking. Where the groups that I Zoom with, it's either my family from all around the country. And the hardest thing there is getting everybody together on the same time frame. If you go from Virginia to Alaska and points in between, during daylight savings time, it's almost impossible to get everybody on and be happy about it because some are still at work, some are ready to go to bed. But the other ones are all with volunteers. We volunteer at the museum. We love our museum. We love each other. So when we're doing, the other 3 trainers and I, the docent trainers, we spend an hour and a half, and probably half an hour of that is just socializing because we're glad to see people. And the other hour, we actually get work done. And so for us, it's always rewarding, and we look forward to our weekly Zoom meetings. And so then the other one that has the 10 or 12 people, that one's actually once a month, and people come on just because they're happy to be socializing with people that they know, and some they know extremely well, and we all have the same interests. So I'm a little bit different because I'm not working. So my Zooms are all for getting work done, yes, but it's also for socializing, and we just love it.
Okay, good. Thank you for sharing. Jared, do you have any thoughts about Zoom fatigue?
I like other people, I'm not on Zoom as much as some of the others. We do a lot of team meetings, but we still once in a while we do in-person meetings as well. And I've had the fortunate thing that I was deemed an essential worker from the beginning, so I've never been the one stuck at home. So I've not been as many Zoom meetings as other people have. I mean, we're moving to some more. We're still in the union negotiations, and we're going to be doing a lot of those remotely now instead of being in person, obviously because of what's happening in the state and in the city. So beyond that, though, so far I've been okay. But I'm always one of those people that I don't always like looking into the camera. So when I can take advantage of it, I just won't show my camera as well. But other than that, I've been okay so far.
Oh, good. Thank you for sharing. Another interesting fact that I read just recently, a lot of people forget or don't know that when you put things in chat, they can be saved and that you have a transcript of the meeting. And sometimes people will be having private sidebar conversations, not realizing that other people might be able to look at the transcript. And with Zoom, and I'm trying to remember the year, but there was actually a tracking system to see how engaged a participant was in Zoom. And when people found out about that, the CEO and the company decided not to do that, which is like, wow, okay, didn't know that. So again, it's just a good reminder, don't say or write in the chat something that you don't want to be made public, right? Because we've all heard horror stories about that, whether it's in Toastmasters or even at work, right? So be mindful of that. What are other ways do you think that we haven't discussed that you could get more engagement out of your fellow Toastmasters? Does anybody have any thoughts to share on that? Yes.
Maybe having an agenda ahead of time, so which typically happens at Toastmasters meetings. But that way people know what is coming up and the time frame, and also how long the meeting's going to run, so that if there is a distraction or something that they need to handle, if the meeting's going to be over in 5 minutes or something, then they might be able to just hang out a few more minutes and know that the meeting will be over, and then they can just handle whatever they need to handle. But I always like to have a little bit of a roadmap to know what is happening and what's expected in the meeting. So I think that would engage or give people the potential actually to be more engaged throughout the meeting, I think.
Excellent. That is so true. As also, it's poor form for the host not to, or the Toastmaster not to stick to the agenda, right? And does anybody that has been a Toastmaster use the chat to give their functionaries a heads up, especially if it's their first time functionary? Has anybody done that? That might be a good,
Like direct chats?
yeah, a private chat.
Yes, I have, not just as a Toastmaster, but even in work meetings. I'll quickly, while someone else is talking, I'll ping someone and, just say, you're up next, are you ready? Make sure you have your file, do you have your file open? In a Toastmasters meeting, it's a little bit, more, we're going to need to move table topics along, so perhaps cut the responses to 1 to 1.5 minutes instead of 2. Absolutely would use the chat feature. The problem is whether or not everybody's paying attention to the chat. So again, that's a training thing. If you do it a lot, your people get used to it. If you don't do it very often, you would need to train and prepare them for that.
Right. Wendy, you were going to comment, and thank you guys for raising your hand. That's awesome.
There's a couple comments I wanted to make. First of all, we use the chat in some of my meetings. We use the chat as a good way to communicate back and forth. Oh, that was a really good point she made. Let's not forget this, or things like that. It's more of a business type meeting where you use it as a tool for communication. One of the things that I wanted to also mention is having the agenda is very, very helpful in keeping people on track. And I think that was Ingrid that mentioned that. I thought that was very, very appropriate. The other thing we use the chat for is our speech evaluations. We'll key them in there and send them directly to that person.
Yes. Awesome. That's a great segue into what I wanted to talk about next. Has anybody?
Can I ask a question about that? Sorry. Wendy, you say you're having people use the chat for giving an evaluation. I guess I just want to ask a question. How does the speaker get a written evaluation then?
He gets one written evaluation from the person that's evaluating him. We have everybody in the group in the meeting evaluate them also, them, whoever it is.
So all the remaining evaluations are done in the chat. Okay, I just wanted to make sure because my
Good
VPE
point.
flag went off about where's that written evaluation that has to be given to the speaker. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, and that was what I was going to bring up about evaluations when you're the Toastmasters. Make sure that the evaluation form is in there if your VP doesn't do it. Ours is fantastic in Showtime, and there is even just a generic one at least, but most of the time it's the one that's specific to the speech. Another thing that we do at Showtime, and we're going to incorporate in Dos Linguas, is under the legacy, and I'm assuming that most of you were under the legacy as well, education program. Is anybody just strictly came in for pathways? Well, in our clubs before, we would read somebody's objectives of the speech, right? That wasn't happening in, or is not happening in Dos Lenguas. So some people didn't feel like they were getting as effective evaluations. So in Showtime, we call on the evaluators to read the speakers, the purpose of the speech. So that might also improve the efficiency in your club and result in more effective evaluations. I've noticed a disturbing trend in two of my other clubs where members aren't giving any written evaluations at all. Is that happening in any other clubs, in your clubs? Or where the speaker only gets that one official written evaluation? Wendy, has any of your clubs, have you experienced that in any of your clubs?
No, we are always encourage other people to do the evaluation. So I think we're very successful in all three of my clubs.
Okay.
But that would be a real problem if they weren't getting feedback from a lot of different people.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about feedback and how we grow. And one of our unique positions with Showtime is we give 2 evaluations, different perspective, and the second evaluation is always more in depth. Ingrid, have you had any, or do you belong to more than one club?
Right now, no, I only belong to Platinum, but we encourage everyone to evaluate. I mean, there is the main evaluator, as you said, and Trish pointed out, is required. However, everyone's encouraged to give an evaluation to the speaker, and they're encouraged to email it to them. So that way they have something, because once they do it in chat, if there isn't time to look at it all or preserve it, it's gone. And that makes it really difficult, you know, to be able to go back and maybe analyze what people were actually suggesting to you as a speaker.
Yeah, well, again, most of us, as soon as we leave the meeting, what happens? We forget. And our best intentions is to go back and fill out the form. So I'd like everybody just to, you know, gentle reminder, people need that evaluation. That's how we grow. We're getting close to the end of our time. Is there a specific topic that somebody would like to bring up or a question? No, are we all pros now? Shelley?
Hey, Shelley, you need to unmute.
Unmute.
Come on. Yes, I was going to say yes. I'm not a member of Toastmasters. My very good friend is, and she invited me, and she didn't make it tonight. But because we do run our meetings, and I've really enjoyed what all of you have said, and I have to think about it because this year's doing it from an organization aspect, as well as some of you that are still working and how it works out for you. But I liked what I think Wendy or Trish had said about having an agenda that really helps. And we always recap at the end of ours, because again, I said earlier, a great portion of our Zoom meetings are social. So we have a lot of fun. But the larger meeting that we do, you get the people that are quiet, and even in person, they're quiet and they don't always participate. And so when you're seeing 10, 12 people and their squares on your screen, and you see 4 or 5 that always are just sitting there very quietly, and it's very difficult to get them to engage in comments when we want them. And our beloved leader, who I love dearly, is not so good at making sure she hits everybody like you have done tonight. You surprised me because I didn't know I'd be called on. So but you did exactly what I think should be done. Having been a manager, I made sure everybody had an opportunity to say something. And so that you have a time when you're sitting here watching everyone, you're saying, why doesn't so-and-so speak up and say things? I want to hear everyone's opinion. So to me, that's one of the biggest challenges, is making sure that people not only feel like they have the freedom to engage and they're expected to engage, but they're wanted to be able to engage. And so I see that as a struggle, because I know many of the people live alone, and they're many times on there just to see other faces and see their friends. But to get them to say something, that's, I think, is the biggest challenge, and keep chatterboxes like me not chatting maybe so much, but sometimes just to make up for the people who don't chat. And you just want people to feel, especially now when I think we have what's it, COVID. You're tired of COVID. You're so sick of it. I don't know where I'm going with this, so I'll just be quiet now. But thank you very much for allowing a new person to, and I don't know if you're all from Phoenix here, which one, but any of you know Mary Lee Madison?
Yes, Mary Lee, yes.
Okay, yeah, she's the one that invited me to come on. So thank you
Oh,
very much.
well, we thank her for, we've loved having you. Let me ask you, since you brought this up, what could you provide us a tip maybe when somebody does go off topic? What would you do to help them
Well,
rein them back in?
first off, it depends what the off-topic topic is.
Mhm.
It might be something that we need to laugh at because it's something cheerful.
Mhm.
And then if they're really off topic, we just say, well, you know, we let them talk a few minutes or a minute, and then you just kind of say, wait, let's get back. There's ways you can do it very gently and respectfully with people. But usually when my various 3 or 4 groups, I guess it is, go off topic, the hardest one to control is the family one.
Mm,
Those of you with large families can contest to that, I'm
yes.
sure.
Yes.
Yes, and we never go into politics. So that takes care of a lot of issues that could happen. We don't go into religion, so that's part of the housekeeping. And when one of you were talking about the housekeeping, it was 2 of you. As tour guides, we give our housekeeping instructions at the beginning of every tour. Yet why is it, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, why is this when docents are in a classroom to get further education, they forget. They forget to turn their phones off. They forget to pay attention instead of looking at their iPads. And you think, you guys do this as your volunteer profession. Yet when you're in a classroom, you can't shut up when you're supposed to be listening to the speaker. So yeah, that's another challenge. So your housekeeping comments really hit me. But I just want to go, people, listen.
And I just automatically assumed that we were all Toastmasters, but as a guest, I could also have use the chat if I knew she was a guest to prepare her and say, hey, thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed the meeting. Are you comfortable? Are you willing to share your experience as a guest? Because it's our tradition to ask for guest comments. So that might be another. But Trish, can you tell us before we end, because I want to be respectful of your time, is what if you have to remove somebody, how to do it from Zoom? Let's say Wendy was very disruptive, very disrespectful. We have to, can you share how we can do that?
I was just looking for it because I've never had to do it. However, when Zoom bombing became a problem with Zooms, then it was good to be able to find those controls if you needed to. If you're a host, and let me promote, Wendy, I'm going to promote you if you don't mind.
Ooh, the troublemaker?
Yeah, the troublemaker. Okay. All right. Do you now have a security option on the left in your control bar at the bottom? You need to unmute.
Yes, I do. I see it now.
All right. I just wanted to confirm, if you're a host or a co-host, you'll have the security shield in your control bar at the bottom. And if you click on that, you have the option to suspend participant activities or remove a participant from the Zoom. And if you kick someone out of the Zoom meeting, it will block them from coming back in again. So I've never had anybody that unruly. Probably my first thing I would do as a host is I would mute them and perhaps turn off their video. And then if I had a co-host to help me, I would ask them to take over Zoom Master so I could talk privately with the person that I've just censored, you know, and let them know if you cannot stay on topic, if you cannot, you know, handle yourself professionally, I'm going to ask you to leave the Zoom. And if they got obnoxious, then I at least have the option to remove them from the Zoom. But again, like it's just like an in-person, there's ways to try to handle it. And I think removing someone from a Zoom would be the last straw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we're out of time. I hope that everybody has learned a couple of things. Thank you for coming, and especially thank you for sharing.
And before everybody takes off, as a reminder, tonight's workshop replay will be posted to our Showtime YouTube channel. It'll post this Friday at 12:15 a.m. if you're up in the wee hours of the morning. Find us on YouTube using Showtime Toastmasters AZ. And for more information about Showtime Toastmasters, Shelley, we'd love to have you come visit a meeting. So for more information about Showtime Toastmasters and other upcoming workshops, please visit us at showtime.toastmastersclubs.org. At this time, we will stop the recording.
Oh, I was going to say my final tip is the host or the Toastmaster never leaves until everybody's gone.